The internet is something so many of us take for granted, but Africa still lags behind other regions in terms of online connectivity. Now, some of the big tech firms are racing to bridge that gap. But at what cost? What happens when the same company controls the content and its delivery? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Kamahl Santamaria. From video chatting to working from home, one thing that is keeping us all going during this lockdown is a good internet connection. Think about when the online world became part of your everyday life and how transformative it was. Ordering, banking, educating, building a business, all from your computer and then from your phone. But in Africa, in 2020, only 4 in every 10 people has access to the internet. And so tech firms are seeing an opportunity. They want to develop the internet infrastructure there. For example, Facebook and Google are teaming up with telecommunications firms to build cables under the sea, projects which aim to connect the continent to the Middle East and Europe. Facebook's is called To Africa. It would connect 23 countries with 37,000 kilometres of cable, equal almost to the circumference of the entire planet. And make no mistake, the demand is there. The Economist found in 2016 that mobile usage in sub-Saharan Africa was actually more widespread than electricity. So no surprise, there are many tech firms racing to get some parts of that market. China's Huawei, for example, announced last year it was launching a 5G network and 2 data centres in South Africa. Microsoft launched its first engineering centres in Kenya and Nigeria last year. It's recruiting African developers to customise their apps for the local market. And the Norwegian web browser developer Opera has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in artificial intelligence for Africans just in the past 2 years. Well, it is the power of the internet which brings our 3 guests to us today, all on Skype. In Palo Alto, California, it's Larry Magid, the CEO of ConnectSafely.org, an internet safety, privacy and security organisation. In Johannesburg, South Africa's Thulani Khanyile, founder of the Energy Decarbonisation Company and also a clean technology entrepreneur. And in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Meried Bekele is the CEO of Internet Experts Network. And a warm welcome to all 3 of you. Whether you like Mark Zuckerberg or not, whether you agree with Facebook and what he does, back in 2013, he said that free basic internet access was actually a human right. Thulani Khanyile in Johannesburg, let me start with you. Do you agree with that?
I do believe that. And so I think it's absolutely critical that we should be able to build infrastructure across the continent that enables Africans to become digital citizens and to be able to access all the benefits of connectivity and participating in the 4th Industrial Revolution. And I think the critical issue as we do so is we simply must not lose sense of our own agency in this process so that we are able to mitigate some of the risks that we'll be talking about today.
Larry Magid, an early thought from you as well about that. So many people all over the world can't do their job without the internet. They can't live day to day without the internet. Do we now consider it a human right?
I think it is a human right. It certainly should be a human right. And of course, it should be global. To that extent, Mark Zuckerberg is absolutely right. But it also, and I don't mean this necessarily disrespectful, but it is reminiscent of U.S. and European imperialism in the sense that it is a Western country, a very wealthy, or a Western company, very wealthy American company going in and laying cable and providing content. So the question is not simply whether it happens, it should happen, but who is in charge and whether there's any connection between the actual connectivity and the content itself. And if that's the case, if there is content control, then it becomes very problematic.
We'll get more into that in a moment. Just a quick thought from Meried Bekele now in Addis Ababa as well. I think what Larry said there was so important, this idea of this sort of Western colonialization feel to it. And that is what I suspect people in Africa will be wary of. Yes, they want the internet, but history teaches them about what can happen when other countries come in.
Yeah, actually, from the point of human rights, yes, getting internet access must be one of the rights for any human being in this planet at this time. And in Africa, we haven't got that benefit for a long time. So getting the access to the internet for all citizens of Africa must be human rights. The concerns regarding colonization, yes, that is very critical. But I think Africans learn a lot from the past colonizations. So I'm sure we can take the advantage of internet access, isolating the disadvantage from it.
While I've got you there, Meried, tell me what internet life is like for you in Ethiopia. I'm just interested to know, when you use your tablet or your computer for anything, for Skype like we're doing now, for anything, I mean, what's the reliability like at the moment in 2020? How much can you rely on it?
Purely from the comparison of Ethiopians' internet history, when you compare it 5 years, 10 years ago, it's much better than that. There is a lot of development, expansion of bandwidths and infrastructure. But when it is compared with the other world, especially the Western world and even the more developed economies in Africa, we have a lot to catch up. Because the main reason is because of a single service provider, state-owned service provider. In Ethiopia, there is no competition, so the quality of service is not good. So reliability is an issue. There are a lot of disconnections, downtimes, and you don't get support immediately from the service provider. So, but with the current progress in the country of opening up the telecom industry, we hope this is a temporary issue.
Okay. So what's interesting, as Meried describes there, is maybe a substandard service, though better than it was, obviously, and that is despite the fact that the African Union, USAID, African Development Bank, World Bank, they've all been putting millions into infrastructure for so long. Maybe I'll ask Thulani about this. Maybe it needs a specialised company like a Google or a Facebook to come in. This is what they do, and it's not just throwing money at a problem, it's coming in with a specific project.
I think that's correct, Kamahl. The reality of the matter, whether we like it or not, is that the resources, the level of resources required to establish infrastructure of this scale and magnitude is such that there are very few organizations globally which have the wherewithal to do that. And so it is to be expected that the large ICT players in the world will drive the process. But what for me becomes crucial is, I'm reminded always in these matters by a great leader of the past, Amilcar Cabral, African leader, who spoke of the importance of our becoming our own liberators.
Okay.
And so, which therefore means to me that, the global firms with the resources will look at this as a great opportunity indeed to build infrastructure and to generate revenue, deepen their market share. That's what is to be expected. But the other challenge that we must rise to as Africans, as citizens, as corporates in Africa, as governments, must be to ensure that we are part of that process. So I go back to the issue of agency, so that not having all of these things being done for us, but rather they are being done with us. And in that way, we can start shaping strategically the evolution of these services in the continent and the value that it brings. The last point I wish to make on this matter is, as in any technology, it can be good or bad.
Yeah.
So you have to be fairly strategic about how you want to deploy it and why you want that to be so. So we need to understand and build the capacity, I would say, from AU and across the continent to build the capacity of policy making and a regulatory framework that ensures that we're able to benefit from the extended infrastructure, but that we're able to address issues such as data privacy, such as fake news, and the number, and indeed, as I say, that that infrastructure will in turn, if we are strategic and purposeful about it, it will ensure that we are able to use it as a means of generating greater economic development in the continent, so that Africa is not just a market of consumers.
Okay, so then, Larry, how does this Facebook project in particular, the Two Africa project, how does that fit into what Thulani's saying? Thulani's talking about joint ventures, about Africans being involved. Is this just a case of Facebook saying, OK, we're going to do this, we're going to put all this cable around the whole continent and connect it up, and then, well, how does it work?
No, I think he's absolutely right that it has to be a joint ventures, not only from the technical side, obviously bringing in local companies in every region, every country, if possible, but also from the education and social side, working with civil society and NGOs in the countries to ensure that they're minimizing misinformation, to ensure that internet safety is being protected and people are being educated on the proper use of the internet. My own organization, connectsafely.org, actually does work with Facebook. I'm on their safety advisory board, and we have expanded the board over the last several years to include people from around the world, and we do need to include Africa as well to make sure that people are getting the infrastructure, but also having local organizations that are helping people use it appropriately. And that also includes making sure that it's under local control, that while Facebook is certainly welcome to provide the cables, that's great, there needs to be programming and content and policing, if necessary, happening at the local level.
Just while I remember, we're talking about this Facebook plan, as we say, to Africa, the cables. I'm remembering as well, Larry, a Google project a few years ago. Weren't they launching balloons or something over Africa that we're going to?
Yeah.
What happened to that?
There have been so many projects over the years, balloons, there's also satellites, of course, and even low-flying airplanes that have been tested. So yes, there have been plenty of projects. And of course, there's internet.org that Facebook launched in 2013, very similar to what we're talking about here, except that it got into trouble because, again, there was some content control. They were bringing basic internet, but essentially there was not net neutrality, which meant that the content was, to some extent, being regulated by Facebook. So there have been a lot of projects involving some interesting technologies, as also involving some interesting policy questions, which ultimately are what people have to resolve.
OK, gentlemen, we've talked mostly in the first half of this program about the infrastructure, literally the pipes here. I'm interested in also what goes through the pipes, the content. Meried, let me come to you. Is there not a concern that if Facebook is putting this much into the infrastructure, that it could have potentially too much power and that it's all about Facebook's content going through? It gives them a way in to promote more and more of their content, I guess in the way that people fear Huawei, the Chinese company, and their infrastructure.
Yes, I think we have also seen a lot of unnecessary experiences from the contents of Facebook recently. And of course, the content owner had the power to influence, and the governments and the citizens will have, especially the government, will have to balance the benefits of access to such content versus the benefit to the citizen, especially from local content point of view. Local companies producing local content should be encouraged and incentivized to generate their local content instead of just depending on external content providers like Facebook. So there must be a balance. It is just, for me, to be honest, I prefer to get the advantage of the infrastructure from that of Facebook and Google for Africa more than the content they are bringing, because the cost of infrastructure in Ethiopia and even in Africa, it's so expensive that only medium class people can have internet connection. Most people cannot afford to have basic internet connection because of the costs to the infrastructure. When there are submarine cables across Africa, that price will go down and more people will start to have the connectivity. That is the very most important part, more than the content coming on the way.
Just out of interest, though, I read anecdotally that actually fewer than 13% of Africans use Facebook, but that a lot, like almost around 200 million WhatsApp users come from Africa. I'm just interested to know from you, Meried, about what people are using it for and why something like WhatsApp and mobile banking and all such things are so popular there.
Mobile banking is not that strong in Ethiopia yet, but in neighboring country like Kenya, M-Pesa is very, very, very huge and famous. And even in Ethiopia, it's opening up. So access to messaging service like WhatsApp and other messaging providers it is a very important access for mobile banking, for small businesses, very basic delivery services, and so on. So that mobile banking and the digitization of money in Africa, that's driven by access to the internet too.
Thulani, Khanyile, we'll come back to you in Johannesburg. Two things which I'm thinking of here about, well, the product of having better internet access. I think we all agree it's a great thing, but it will lead to more free speech, more democracy, which again, it's a good thing. But I suspect also there's a lot of leaders in Africa who wouldn't like that and would be wary of giving their people that much ability and a stronger ability to speak up.
I think you're absolutely spot on, Kamahl. That in a number of countries, there are already concerns, very strong concerns about manipulation of democratic processes in various forms, including electoral outcomes. And so indeed, even the experience of Cambridge Analytica and entities then underscores the importance of addressing this matter so that indeed there's a tremendous capacity for disinformation as well as misinformation in the process. But also what it does mean for me personally is that we've got to then indeed strengthen the hand not only of African governments and corporates, but of civil society, that it has a voice as these solutions evolve across our continent, so that we're able to say, indeed, access to internet not only allows young people to be on social media, but you see it now with the COVID-19 challenges, that for care, for education, for various products, even around agriculture services, financial services, that internet connectivity can substantially improve people's access to those kind of services. So I think that's absolutely key.
Larry, Magid, is there potential here for almost like a three-way clash between governments, between the outside corporates, the Facebooks and the Googles, and then the local companies who are supposed to be part of the whole infrastructure, and actually the people as well? It's a four-way crash potentially.
Yeah, it's a four-way clash, and of course other powers that be, whether they're local or international, that might want to use the internet for either good or negative things. And I think that the point that was just made about misinformation is very important. If you think about here in the United States, where of course we've had the internet for a great period of time, we've seen some things over the last few years which have been very disturbing in terms of how it was used by, first of all, foreign powers to influence our election, and how the president has used the internet to rally his forces and his troops in ways that have not always been positive. And so we've got a great force which can be used for good. But I think that when it's coming into an area, the local citizens need to think very hard and very carefully about how it's implemented. Again, consumer education is so important. Campaigns about misinformation, campaigns for people to understand that the internet is going to bring you media and content which is not necessarily trusted. And that's different from the media that people may have been used to from terrestrial broadcast, and cable and other forms. So it's important that it be accompanied by an education program, and that education program be multi-stakeholder, not just be the government, certainly not just the companies, but multi-stakeholders involved in making sure people understand how to use it appropriately, and certainly not to believe everything you see online.
Quite. Do you think, and I think you said before, Larry, that you actually serve as an advisor to Facebook. Do you think they take that seriously enough, and any other tech company, that they realise they have to be very much part. It's not just a case of put the infrastructure in place and then let it do its thing.
Oh, no, they take it very seriously, and there is a group within Facebook, a safety group, and a privacy group that takes this very seriously. Now, I can't say that every single employee is doing the right thing 100% of the time, but I can say that the people who are tasked with this not only take information seriously, but are very conscious of making sure this is a global effort. I mean, again, as an American representative of the Safety Advisory Board, I have colleagues from around the world, and they are growing in terms of the developing world, to make sure this isn't just a Western approach, but we think about it from an international perspective, allowing the local NGOs to do the important education that needs to be done.
Gentlemen, we're starting to run down the clock now, so I've just got a final thought I want to put to all of you, and that's, well, it goes back to my original thought, which was about the internet being a right to people, a human right. I think we all agree that it probably is, but water, education, healthcare, all these other things, electricity. We pointed out before that more people are using mobile phones in Africa than they've got electricity. Meried, in Addis Ababa, are there actually more important things to be putting money into right now before internet connectivity? Or could internet connectivity help those things?
I would say internet connectivity helps all verticals, whether it is education. Without internet, it's difficult to give quality education. Health, internet is very important for all kinds of remote telehealth services, using limited doctors in Africa, in Ethiopia, to serve as many people as possible, using internet as a connectivity, as a technology, transportation, all kinds of activities, government, e-government services, all are being dependent on internet. So I would say investing on the internet means investing on everything else that is required for the economic development of the country.
Thulani, I've got a little bit of time left, so I'll leave the final word with you. Your thoughts on, well, what comes first? As I said, those basic things like water and education and health, or do we go big picture and look at what can be achieved with other things?
Kamahl, I think they are not mutually exclusive. So indeed, internet access is crucial in advancing all those other related rights. And so for me, in closing, the issue is that of access. And so that speaks to the importance of using the resources that are coming in for internet development to advance other services and rights. And chief amongst that, I would say, is the issue of energy. So that if 600 million Africans in sub-Saharan Africa have no access to electricity, then it becomes difficult for them to fully utilize the opportunities and benefits of connectivity. And lastly, I think we also need to be engaged and to engage these international corporates as they come into the continent to ensure that a certain critical services around education, extension of education and healthcare can be availed on a free and or affordable basis, that people can make use of them. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, this has been a very smart and interesting conversation, and not a single Skype dropout throughout the whole 25 minutes, which makes me very happy as well. So the internet must be all right there. Larry Magid in Palo Alto, Thulani Khanyile in Johannesburg, and Meried Bekele in Addis Ababa. Thank you all. And to you as well, wherever and however you're watching, thanks for taking the time with us. If you've got a nice, strong internet connection, then use it. Head to the shows section at aljazeera.com. You can visit our homepage there, watch this episode or any previous ones if you like. Also, Facebook, which we've been talking about, facebook.com/AJ Inside Story for more discussion. At AJ Inside Story on Twitter, and at Kamahl AJE if you want to message me directly. I'm Kamahl Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. See you again soon.